Welcome to the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception for the fifth presentation in our Lenten series. I'd like to remind you of the methodology that we're following. We are helping especially the catechumens who have chosen to enter the Church at Easter time through the sacraments of initiation. We want to help them review what's been going on in their lives thus far in their journey of faith, and to identify the different stages through which they have gone from one particular point of view or another. We have been using symbols and signs taken from salvation history. For example, on the third Sunday, we used the symbol of tent or temple that represents the presence of God to people at one time or another. In the early Old Testament, Moses erected the meeting tent after he had made the covenant between God and the people and given them the Ten Commandments as the standard of life expected of them. On the Sabbath day, they would gather near the tent in order to remember what God had done and to ponder the implications of all of that for their lives. Later, they moved into the land and were able to gather near the tent at various shrines, until finally Solomon erected a temple of stone in Jerusalem, and only there were sacrifices offered to Yahweh from the harvest as an expression of gratitude, of dependence, and the yearning for communion with Yahweh. But Jesus, we discover, is the perfect embodiment of God's presence among us. God the Son made man. He was willing to die and rise from the grave. And he thus replaces the temple. He is the place where we meet God, and God reaches down to us to lift us up into his presence. On the fourth Sunday of Lent, we use the symbol of light to represent the three glows, you might say, brightnesses of God along the way of salvation history, from less to more. In the Old Testament, there was the glow of prophecy, bringing a measure of revelation and clarity about the existence of God, his providence, and his plan. In the New Testament, the miracles of Jesus shed light too. They gave credence to the greater things that he would say about God and humanity. His revelation of the Trinity and of our own divinization would be the final light. But also he would give, through the Spirit, the gift of faith, which enables our mind to grasp the truth that he presents. And so the catechumens have been finding their way out of the darkness into the light. Today, on the fifth Sunday, we use an image taken from nature, a grain of wheat. Or, to back up a bit and see a bigger picture, the place of planting of a plant and how it grows and how it develops. And all this is a symbol of moral life, of the behavior expected of God's people. Now, a healthy plant produces good fruit, and a bad plant, poor fruit. If we look at pagan religions, they produced a mixture of both positive and negative results from the point of view of morality or ethics. And the reason for this inconsistency is that their morality was based on a mythical understanding of reality. Also, the models for morality were the gods, who were amoral. So there was poor modeling here that produces very often very bad results. When we move to the historical religion found in Israel, we see that things are very different. That now there is a standard for morality based on historical intervention of one God in particular places and times, reaching out to a people and offering them a way of life that is rational and not mythical, that is based upon the equality of all people before the one Creator, all having the same rights and duties. What God reveals in the Ten Commandments, for example, is very clear. However, it is also challenging and difficult. And unfortunately, people can respond in two negative ways. One would be through rebellion, which certainly happened in the Old Testament. There would be the appearance of a nice fruit, but rotten inside. The other negative response is that which took place at the time of Jesus, and this was legalism, using the law simply as a defense mechanism, a hardness like that of a grain of wheat or of corn. Jesus challenges all of this when we see in him not only the perfect fulfillment of the law of Moses, which requires justice, but also a way of life which is motivated by love, doing justice out of love, and going beyond justice to generosity. And he himself uses this comparison from nature, and he says that unless the grain of wheat dies to its hardness, it can produce nothing. The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified, says he. I solemnly assure you, unless the grain of wheat falls to the earth and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. The man who loves his life loses it, while the man who hates his life in this world preserves it to life eternal. Anyone who would serve me, let him follow me. Where I am, there will my servant be. So Jesus is willing to be like that grain that falls into the ground, is softened by the warm earth and the moisture, is willing to put down roots and then a shoot above. And he becomes that vine of which we can be living branches. Only with him and in him and through him can we produce a harvest that honors the Father and is of service to others. Amen.